Hi, everyone. Welcome to your first lecture for CP Bio. So today we are going to be talking about chapter 15.1, which is chapter 51 is on animal behavior. So we're going to be focusing just the first section today. So I am expecting you guys to be reading the supplemental chapter in the book and taking notes because you are going to be turning in your notes just to prove that you have listened to this lecture and taken notes on this topic. So let's just dive on in and get going. So an overview is just how and why of animal activity. So we like to use the example of fiddler crabs because they feed with their small claws and they wave with their large claws. Male fiddler crabs tend to engage in claw waving a little bit more than females do. And that's because claw waving is used to repel other males, but is used to attract females. So this is a fiddler crab. This is the claw that they would eat with, and this is the one that they would wave with. A behavior is the nervous system's response to a stimulus that is carried out by the muscular or hormonal system. A behavior is subject to natural selection. In the case of the fiddler crab, the behavior is the waving, and the natural selection is the crab with the bigger claw tends to get the female, and it repels away the other males. 51.1 is all about the discrete sensory inputs that simulate both simple and complex behaviors. So Nico Tinbergen first identified 4 questions that should be asked when discussing animal behavior. First, we should be asking what stimulus elicits the behavior and what psychological mechanism causes the response. And second, how do the animal's experiments through growth and development influence the response? The third question we should ask is how does the behavior aid survival and reproduction? And the fourth question is what is the behavior's evolutionary history? A behavioral ecology is the study of the ecological and evolutionary basis for animal behavior. Behavioral ecology integrates the proximity and the ultimate explanations for the reason behind the animal behavior. Proximate causation addresses the how a behavior occurs, which includes Tinbergen's questions number 1 and number 2. And the ultimate causation addresses the why of the animal behavior, which addresses Tinbergen's 3 and 4. Fixed action patterns are a type of behavior. It's a sequence of unlearned, innate behaviors that is unchangeable. We can think of fixed action patterns in humans like breathing. It's unlearned because it's something that we naturally do from your first breath to your last breath. It's innate, meaning we don't have to think about it for it to happen. And it's unchangeable because we have to breathe to survive. Once this fixed action pattern is initiated, it's usually carried through to completion. A fixed action pattern is triggered by an external cue known as a sign stimulus. Tinbergen observed male stickleback fish responding to a passing red truck. The male stickleback fish, in this example, the stimulus for attack was the red truck and the underside of the intruder. When presented with unrealistic models, the attack behavior still occurred as long as there was the color red present. So this is a stickleback fish. So when they see this red, it's an attacking behavior. So they get into their defense mechanism. Migration. Environmental cues can also trigger the movement in a particular direction. Migration is the regular, long-distance change in location. Animals can orient themselves using several different tools. One is the position of the sun based off of their internal clock. That is the integral part of our nervous system. They can also orient themselves using the northern star or Earth's magnetic field. So birds migrate, fish migrate. Behavioral rhythms. So some animal behavior is affected by the animal's internal clock. That rhythm, it's a daily cycle that tells us when to wake up, when to go to bed, when to eat, all of those types of things. And in animals, that internal clock also tells us when it's time to reproduce. Behaviors such as migration and reproduction are linked together to changing season or inside that internal clock. Daylight and darkness are common seasonal cues, and some behaviors are linked to the lunar cycle as well, which affects the tidal movements. Signals and communication. In behavioral ecology, a signal is a behavior that causes a change in another animal's behavior. Communication is the transmission and reception of these signals. The forms of animal communication. So humans communicate, we are animals, we communicate verbally. We also can communicate visually, tactilely, and auditorily. But there's also chemical communication as well. Fruit fly courtship follows a 3-step stimulus response chain. At first, males identify a female of the same species and then orient himself towards her. This is a chemical communication because he smells the female's chemicals in the air. The chemical can be in the form of a hormone or anything like that. Then he sees her, which is a visual communication, and he sees the female and turns his body towards hers. The second thing that happens is the male alerts the female to his presence. This is tactile. He taps on the female with his forelegs, so one of his front legs, he'll tap on her. It's then a chemical communication because he chemically confirms whether or not that fruit fly is a female or not. The third step, a male produces a courtship song to inform the female of his species. This is auditory because he extends and vibrates his wings in the form of a song. All 3 steps are successful if and when the female will then allow the male to copulate with him. So showing it happening, the orientation, tapping, and the singing. Honeybees show a complex communication using symbolic language. A bee returning from the field performs a dance to communicate information about the distance and direction of the food source. This is called the waggle dance. I'm going to post a supplemental video of the waggle dance happening as well with this video. So go watch that after you take your notes. So this is the beehive right here, the direction of the sun, the food source, and whatnot. So this is showing 3 different food sources. So these are worker bees. They perform something called a waggle dance. B is a round dance for a food source, but most commonly they use a waggle dance when food is distant. So what they do is from their beehive, they perform a circle and then show the direction from the beehive. So we're looking at A here. Show the direction from the beehive that it goes, and then they circle around and keep performing it. Now looking at B, our bee is traveling in this direction, so he goes around and around, back and forth, performing the waggle, telling people the direction of the food source. But if you look at example C over here, C is a 30-degree difference from point A to point B. So that's a straight line. So this bee knows to tell people in what direction, 30 degrees from the hive, is the food source. Pheromones is another way that animals can communicate. It's through odors that emit a chemical substance. A female moth can attract a male moth several kilometers away by excreting these pheromones. A honeybee queen produces a pheromone that affects the development and the behavior of female worker bees and male drone bees. And a minnow or a catfish is injured, it sends out an alarm substance in the fish's skin that disperses through the water that induces a fright response amongst the fish in the area. Basically, it tells them that there is a danger over here, so they need to get as far away from it as possible. Pheromones can be effective at very low concentration. Nocturnal animals, such as most terrestrial mammals, depend on the olfactory and auditory communication. So olfactory being smell from chemicals and auditory being ears. Diurnal animals, such as humans and most birds that are awake during the day, use visual and auditory communication. And that's all we're going to do for today. So make sure you take your notes from the PowerPoint from this video. Take your notes from the book. You're going to post those online, and that will be your classwork for today. And then also check out that video on the waggle dance. Have a great day, guys.